As you can see, there's not a lot of work getting done on this field. In fact, there's no work getting done on this field by the Indianapolis Colts today. But there is work getting done inside. They had a walkthrough, assistant coaches available to talk to, coordinators as well. We had a good conversation with Gus Bradley. Gus Bradley talking about the cornerbacks, talking about the pass rush, talking about the depth on the defensive line, and who's kind of standing out and who needs to take a step forward. Here's Gus Bradley.
We've had just to review some of the things, a couple good weeks of practice. We've had a couple guys, just some nicks, but we're looking at us trying to get some of these younger guys opportunities, at linebacker and seeing what they have, as far as building that depth and at the nickel spot, and corner spot and safety spot. So there's a lot of that. I think we're closer to getting, our install now is really calmed down. So we used yesterday to kind of get back to our fundamentals now. We need a couple good days of fundamental practices to get that back in. It's not as taxing install-wise, so hopefully get back in tune with that.
How you feel about your corners?
Good, well, we'll see. Now we got Juju back, right? So he's starting to practice, and just like we thought before, they've got some length. You see him at the line of scrimmage do some good things, but they just need a lot of reps right there. But, some young guys, DJ Baker is showing up, is doing a good job on the perimeter. Hopefully Juju now gets some reps here, get rushed back, and, see how those guys look. Jalen's done a really good job. He's had a couple days now when he's played really tight coverage and has made some plays. Yesterday he had a couple PBUs, one in the red zone, one out in the field. So it's just, that part of it where you see flashes and then just trying to give them as many looks as they can see. And our offense does a good job with that.
With Juju and Darius being out for a little while, does that mean you kind of have to postpone having any big conclusions about the cornerback position until those guys get out there?
I think so. There's probably a little bit of that. As coaches, we always try to make it a positive and say, it just gives other opportunities for guys to step up, and but you would like to have them all out there. And now, fortunately, we're starting to see that.
You spoke on how big of an opportunity it is for these younger guys to get opportunities at practice. How big is this upcoming preseason game going to be for them?
It's good. Again, it'll be a fundamental game where we go out there and really just want them to play fast with good fundamentals, and see where we're at and try to not make it overly complicated. Just really use an evaluation to say, how do they play? Just using fundamental techniques. Try to make calls where it's limited on bus. Just go out there and play fast and see how they do.
Is there a different comfort level with Kenny Moore this year than last year at this time?
Yeah, well, I think the comfort level last year was everything we heard about him. Now it's everything we know about him, having a year with him. And I think the respect for his play just, keeps adding up with every practice. The things he does, it might not be, okay, hey, when you get this is how we see it. And he just uses reactions, and sometimes it'll be, hey, I just felt it, so I shot my gun, or I took a shot here, and you just have such great trust with him. He has such a really good feel for the game. So I think now that having a year of experience with him, now it's, we've seen it.
You kind of said before that I think that you would give him a little more freedom this year. Is that accurate? And then are you seeing that in the playmaking? Is that why
I think ideally is, when guys are more and more comfortable in the system and their personality and how they play and they consistently play, that when they take shots, it's kind of a calculated shot and you trust it. And I think in situations like that, yes, you give them some of that freedom.
When it looks like it's paying off, or that's true?
And I think so. A lot of our guys, they're starting to understand things where they are taking some freedoms to put themselves in position to make plays.
With Samson and Taekwon out, Buck kind of being out recently, what opportunities has that given some of the depth guys, the young guys on the D-line, and what have you seen out of trying to find those eight?
It's the 8 deep process, right? Finding those guys. And with Buck out, we've got a battle inside, with some guys. We're seeing some guys that have really good pass rush ability, like one-on-ones. We're seeing some wins there. But it's just, how are we going to hold up against the run? How are we going to hold up against double teams? How are we going to hold up? And those things we're starting to see now. But I think these preseason games and then these practices against Chicago and Philly, I think that will give us more of an idea where we're at there.
Who's all in that group that you're looking at?
Well, it's like, Haven McKelvin, Eric Johnson, that group of guys right there, that are playing inside, that we're just kind of taking a look at now and seeing. Tommy is doing a good job for us. He's really strong, really athletic. So, that group of guys, Caleb's in there. We're looking at him. He's showing up some. So I think it's all right. If we need to give a breather to Grove and Buck, who's going in? Who's the next set of guys? I think that's what we're trying to find out. And, it's unfortunate with Buck, but now those guys are going to get a chance to play. And, we might be able to determine it a little bit quicker.
What are you seeing from Nick Cross, just, I guess, flashing these last few practices and looking a lot more comfortable at this time of year than
right.
last year?
Well, and what we got to do now, too, is I think with some of these younger guys that maybe they're making plays with 2s and 3s, is to get them with the 1s and see how real is it. And that's our job as coaches, say, all right, he's making some plays. Let's get him at the 1s and see how he handles it. Let's see Cam McGrone. Let's put him with the 1s and see what it looks like with him there, or JoJo. And I think with Nick, it just kind of happened, right? Like he went in there because Julian's injured, and now he's playing with the 1s. So he's playing more and more consistent. I think it's like, all right, just keep going. There's no break for him. It's every day we're watching him. And it feels like, when he knows that he plays more consistently. So, signs are trending in the right direction for him as a guy that we trust. Now, also with Nick, he's playing strong, he's playing free, and he's also playing some nickel. So we're putting more on his plate, but it's kind of the more you can do. And when he goes through walkthrough and starts doing things right, it's trying to find ways. All right, he can play all three of them. Is there a position, or is there somehow we can find a way to get him on the field? We're kind of in that beginning stage.
So Rodney was out yesterday during team drills. Do you guys anticipate him being back soon? And then what did you see with Denbo in his spot yesterday?
Denbo has got really good speed. He plays fast. I think he's jumped out at us just as far as a consistent. He's a guy that, played almost like a linebacker position. So it's like, shoot, he's not going to turn down a hit. He's aggressive, he's physical, but he's 2 good plays. One, where he kind of head scratcher, 2 good, but he's real sharp. I think that if he gets more and more playing time in these preseason games, we'll have a better evaluation of him too.
Having a guy like Denard Avery on the roster, have you contemplated kind of using that one of the linebacker spots for that like pass rusher type that you've had in the past in this defense?
Well, he does. In some of the D-line spots, you look at, what's your philosophy? Is there such thing as a designated pass rusher? Do you have that guy that's one of those spots? But he does a good job playing on first and second down too. But I think that's kind of maybe been his role, because he does have really good speed and get off. But we're seeing consistently where if he was playing out there on first and second down, I think he's more than just that for us.
I think it's safe to say we're not going to see Shaq in the preseason, but how good is it to see him on the field during those padded 11-on-11s?
Right. I think everybody's watching, right? As coaches, every plant, every break, everything he does. But in that, I think yesterday we saw his footwork, his change of direction, all that. He was going in an upward bend, but he took a big jump yesterday in about 3 or 4 plays where we saw it. And I know I went over and talked to him. I said, that was your best day of making that kind of a jump. So I think each and every day he's building more and more confidence, and he just needs to play like he is in practice and, start building that back up again. Because, shoot, he had another PBU yesterday. He is so natural back there and has such a good understanding that, when that catches up. So he's progressing real well, and I thought yesterday he made his biggest jump.
So it's different than last year, right? I mean, he himself said last year he didn't see the dynamic type of plays or just the dynamic physical movements.
I think that it might have been you saw some good things, but you never saw the spike of a good thing. Does that make sense? Like you saw him, all right, oh, there you go. But it was more of a spike yesterday where you saw his movement that gives you to say, oh, yeah, it's going in the right direction now. We just got to keep him going and be smart. And our guys are doing a great job as far as the number of reps and to build that part. So I'm sure it's a mentality as well as a physically, part thing for him, but I thought that was a good sign. And he knew it. He knew that there were some things yesterday that showed up.
As a coach, do you get more out of the shared practices, or do you get more out of preseason games?
So good question. I think shared practices, we like them just because you can see some different things and you're going against another team in training camp. You know, at times there's a little bit of a lull maybe, but when you go against a team, it's just new guys and new scheme. And I think that that maturity that you're trying to build as a defense, you're seeing other things and it can help build that quicker. Now, preseason are good too because we can have a chance to judge where we are fundamentally. And some of these younger guys, I think fundamentally for our guys that have played quite a bit, and then also the younger guys, how are they playing and where's their level at? How do we see them fitting in the big picture?
That's Gus Bradley, and I think most telling were the comments about the preseason game against the Bills, where it's just about fundamentals. It's about getting on the field. It's about being fundamentally sound. It's about preparing for September 10th. It is not about winning and losing. It's not about winning and losing individual battles. It's about playing good fundamental football and doing it every time and giving maybe this team and Bradley sort of a baseline with which they can judge future progress. That's important. Gus Bradley, really interesting guy. Love talking to Gus Bradley. You know what? The guys on this staff, very, very enthusiastic about being on this staff. Gus Bradley, Jim Bob Cooter. We're going to talk to Tony Sperano Jr. in a little bit. Very enthusiastic. I think enthusiasm is a big part of what you've got to show in these interviews, and that's a great lesson for everybody. You come into an interview and you don't seem like you want the job, you're not going to get the job. But if you come in and you got a bunch of enthusiasm and a bunch of energy, you got a shooter's chance.